Imagine this, it's 1944. Germany is collapsing. Allied bombs turn cities to dust. The Eastern Front is a graveyard. And yet, somewhere in the mountains of Silesia, a handful of SS scientists are still working. Locals whisper about a strange hum echoing through the trees. Purple light bleeding from underground tunnels. Guards shoot anyone who wanders too close. Whatever's happening there, it isn't ordinary war work. They call it Die Glocke. The bell, a code name, a shape, a rumor that refuses to die. Decades later, a Polish journalist, Ludwikowice, claims he saw classified documents describing a bell-shaped machine filled with a mysterious metallic liquid called Serum 525. When powered up, he says, the device killed test animals, scorched walls, and glowed violet. Sounds cinematic, right? Too cinematic. Because here's the twist: no one else ever saw those documents. Not one. Still, the story spreads like wildfire. By the time the internet arrives, Hitler's bell has turned into the holy grail of Nazi secrets. Part science, part occult, part impossible. But beneath the noise hides a real question worth asking. Why did so many brilliant German scientists vanish or go silent after 1945? And what were they truly building in those last desperate months of the Reich? Next episode, we'll dive into the origin of the myth, how Nazi Germany's obsession with miracle weapons created the perfect breeding ground for legends like the bell. Picture Nazi Germany in 1943. The war that was supposed to last 6 months has dragged into its 4th bloody year. The Eastern Front is collapsing, Allied bombers own the skies, and Hitler's once invincible army is running out of steel, fuel, and hope. And when a dictator runs out of reality, he turns to fantasy. That fantasy took the form of the Wunderwaffe, or wonder weapons. Every scientist, engineer, and dreamer inside the Reich was ordered to find the one miracle that could change the tide of history. Jet fighters that flew faster than sound, missiles that could cross oceans, and yes, machines that promised to break the laws of physics themselves. Inside this fever of desperation, myth and science began to blur. Men like General Hans Kammler, the brutal SS officer who controlled the V-2 rocket program and the underground armament empire, started channeling resources into black budget research. Kammler wasn't a dreamer. He was a bureaucrat of death. Cold, efficient, obsessed with results. And yet, even he began to chase whispers of technology that bordered on the impossible. Years later, stories would emerge from scattered witnesses. A strange bell-shaped device, guarded by the SS, tested in the mountains near Ludwikowice, Poland. Some say it hung from a steel frame. Others claimed it spun violently, radiating a bluish glow. All of them agreed on one thing. Whatever it was, it terrified everyone who saw it. So where did the legend really begin? When the war ended, Allied intelligence seized trainloads of Nazi documents. Most were catalogued, some were buried under decades of classification. And in that silence, the imagination of writers and journalists filled the gaps. By the 1990s, Wikowski's book, The Truth About the Wonder Waff, poured gasoline on the fire. He linked D. Glocke to Kammler, to secret tunnels, even to supposed post-war US experiments. But the evidence, second-hand at best, no original files, no confirmed witnesses, no physical remains. Still, the story worked because it felt true. It matched what the world already believed about Nazi ambition. That their hunger for domination knew no limits, not even the limits of nature itself. And in that sense, the myth of the bell wasn't just a story about technology. It was a reflection of fear, the fear that human genius, when married to ideology, can create monsters we can't imagine. Next episode, we pull back the curtain further into the real science Nazi Germany pursued in those final years and what it tells us about how far they were willing to go. By 1944, Hitler's war machine was crumbling, but his obsession with miracle weapons only grew stronger. Berlin was burning. The Allies were closing in. Yet deep underground, in laboratories and mountain tunnels, something else was happening, something strange, something beyond the boundaries of conventional science. Let's strip away the myth for a second. Germany did lead the world in certain advanced technologies during the war: jet propulsion, guided missiles, nuclear research, even radar countermeasures that baffled the Allies. That's real, documented, photographed, verified. But then there were the other projects, the ones hidden in the shadows. Kammler's SS empire oversaw a web of underground research sites. Places like Der Ries in Lower Silesia, an entire complex carved into mountains, filled with slave laborers, secret materials, and no oversight from the outside world. It was here, according to post-war rumors, that the bell was supposedly tested. Eyewitnesses, or at least those who claim to be, described a metallic object shaped like a bell, roughly 3 meters tall and 2 meters wide. Inside it, 2 counter-rotating cylinders filled with a glowing liquid known as Zerum 525, a metallic, mercury-like substance that pulsed with energy when activated. The tests, they said, produced deadly radiation. Plants died instantly. Animals liquefied. Some even said the scientists themselves were burned alive during the experiments. But here's where the story fractures. No physical remains of the bell were ever found. No German document mentions D. Glocke. And no Allied intelligence report, not even the detailed OSS or British debriefings of captured Nazi scientists, mentions such a device. Still, there's one reason this myth refuses to die. It mirrors Nazi reality too closely to dismiss outright. Think about it. The Nazis were chasing atomic weapons, time manipulation, and anti-gravity flight. They recruited physicists, occultists, and even ancient mythology into their war effort. Himmler's SS ran the ANENB, an institute dedicated to proving mystical Aryan origins. They sent expeditions to Tibet looking for traces of an ancient master race. In that context, something like the bell doesn't sound that crazy anymore. Let's be clear, though, the Nazis didn't invent UFOs or teleportation. What they did invent was the psychological blueprint for every conspiracy theory that came after, because they blurred the line between science and faith, between progress and madness. And that's where this story lives, in that twilight zone where human arrogance meets desperation. In the next part, we go even deeper into what might have been the real purpose of Glocke. Not as a time machine, not as an anti-gravity device, but as something darker, a weapon designed not to win the war, but to rewrite how we remember it. By the final year of the war, Nazi Germany wasn't fighting for victory anymore. It was fighting for mythic immortality. And that's the real clue to understanding Glocke. Forget the science for a moment. Forget the glowing mercury and the spinning rotors. Because when you strip it all away, what remains is ideology and the desperate illusion of control in a collapsing empire. The Third Reich wasn't built on reason. It was built on belief, on the idea that destiny, blood, and will could override reality. When Hitler's armies began to crumble, the Nazi leadership didn't double down on logic. They doubled down on faith. The faith that some secret force, some hidden weapon, could reverse fate itself. Enter Glocke. Even if it never existed physically, it existed psychologically as the embodiment of that blind faith. It symbolized the Reich's final illusion that science could play God. But let's consider a darker interpretation, one rooted in documented fact. By 1944, Himmler's SS had absorbed hundreds of physicists, chemists, and engineers into secret research programs. These weren't random experiments. They were designed to create weapons of terror. From nerve gas to radiation-based technology, the SS wanted tools that didn't just destroy bodies, they destroyed hope. Now imagine this: a giant, rotating bell generating intense electromagnetic fields and lethal radiation. It doesn't need to fly. It doesn't need to travel through time. If it kills every living thing nearby, poisons the soil, and warps the air, that's still a weapon. And perhaps that's all it ever was. Some historians suggest Glocke may have been an early attempt at harnessing nuclear or electromagnetic energy, inspired by the same research that fueled the Manhattan Project. But the Nazis lacked uranium, stability, and scientific consensus. So instead of progress, they created chaos, half science, half magic. That's what happens when ideology dictates innovation. Here's the hard truth: even if the bell was nothing but a myth, the belief in it was real enough to kill people. Dozens of slave laborers, scientists, and guards disappeared in those mountain tunnels. Documents were burned, witnesses executed, and Kammler, the man at the center of it all, vanished without a trace. He was never captured, never tried at Nuremberg. It's as if he simply evaporated from history. And that's what makes Glocke so seductive. It's not just a story about lost technology. It's a story about lost souls, about how human arrogance, when cornered, starts reaching for the supernatural. The Nazis wanted to conquer the world. But what they tried to build in their final days, that was something even darker, a way to conquer reality itself. In the chaos of 1945, as the Third Reich collapsed like a dying star, one man seemed to melt right into the smoke: SS General Hans Kammler. He wasn't just another Nazi officer. He was one of the most powerful men you've never heard of. Kammler controlled Germany's secret weapons program. Everything from the V-2 rockets that terrorized London to the underground factories that built them. He oversaw the forced labor camps, the hidden bunkers, and the deepest vaults of Nazi research. And most importantly, he was the man allegedly in charge of Glocke. Now here's where things get eerie. In the last weeks of the war, Kammler was supposedly seen in Czechoslovakia. Then, suddenly, nothing. No body. No records. No confirmed death. Just gone. Some reports claim he was captured by the Americans and given immunity in exchange for his scientific knowledge. Others say he escaped to South America with help from the SS rat lines, the same secret networks that smuggled Nazis to Argentina and Chile. But one theory stands out, that Kammler, along with the Bell, was secretly taken by US intelligence under Operation Paperclip, the real-life program that brought over 600 Nazi scientists to America after the war. That's not conspiracy, that's fact. Men like Wernher von Braun, the father of the Apollo moon program, were Nazi engineers first. They built weapons for Hitler before they built rockets for NASA. So ask yourself, if the US was willing to forgive and recruit men like that, why not Kammler too? But here's where the story twists into the realm of legend. Polish villagers near the Wenceslas mine reported seeing strange convoys in 1945, trucks and trains moving at night, guarded by armed AS men. Then, Allied scouts later found a massive steel structure shaped like a test rig buried in the mountains. Locals called it the Henge. And even today it stands circular, reinforced, hauntingly out of place. Was it a cooling tower for some industrial plant? Or was it the test frame for de Glocke? No one can say for sure. But the timing, the secrecy, the disappearances, they form a pattern too strange to ignore. And that's the genius, or the curse, of history's greatest mysteries. They're built not on proof, but on the spaces where proof should be. Kammler's story ends in that void. He may have been executed. He may have defected, or he may have carried with him a technology or an idea so dangerous that it had to be buried forever. Whatever the truth, Kammler's disappearance turned de Glocke from rumor into legend, because legends thrive where facts die. In the next part, we'll follow that legend across oceans into the Cold War and through the secret labs of the new superpowers. Because what happened after 1945 might be even stranger than what came before. When the war ended in 1945, The world thought the nightmare was over. The swastikas burned, the FU her dead, the Reich in ruins. But in truth, the war didn't end. It just changed battlegrounds. The weapons of ideology were replaced by the weapons of science. And the race for domination didn't stop with Berlin's fall. It just moved to Washington and Moscow. Here's the brutal truth the textbooks rarely emphasize. The world's two new superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, built their strength on the bones of Nazi science. The race for the atomic bomb, the creation of intercontinental missiles, the dawn of space exploration. All of it carried the fingerprints of German engineers who had once sworn loyalty to Hitler. Under Operation Paperclip, the US secretly brought over hundreds of those men, not just scientists, but SS members, war criminals, and ideologues. They were given new names, clean records, and fat government salaries. And their knowledge of rocketry, jet propulsion, and advanced energy became the foundation of America's technological supremacy. Now think about that. The same minds that built the V-2 rockets for the destruction of London built the Saturn V that carried humans to the moon. The same man, Wernher von Braun, who saluted Hitler, later shook hands with President Kennedy. History, as always, loves irony more than justice. So where does Die Glocke fit in this transformation? Here's where it gets unnervingly plausible. During declassified CIA reviews from the early Cold War, American analysts spoke of unexplained energy propulsion concepts recovered from Nazi research. Though the bell isn't named directly, certain documents describe electrogravitic field experiments and rotational plasma phenomena. In plain English, they were studying anti-gravity and field propulsion. Exactly the kind of thing the bell legend claims to have tested. Meanwhile, across the Iron Curtain, Soviet intelligence was doing the same. Captured German scientists like Helmut Trupp were transferred to the USSR to build their own rocketry programs. And some Soviet files later referred to unusual magnetic research near the Urals. Coincidence? Maybe. But when both superpowers suddenly became obsessed with controlling gravity, it starts to look less like coincidence and more like a continuation. Here's the uncomfortable reality. World War II didn't just end with surrender. It evolved into a technological Cold War built on secrets that were too advanced or too horrifying to reveal to the public. And Die Glocke, whether real or symbolic, it became the ghost at the center of it all, a whisper of forbidden knowledge passed between intelligence agencies, classified files, and UFO reports for decades to come. Because after the war, the question wasn't, did the Nazis build the bell? It became, what did we build using what they left behind? 2 years after the war ended, a farmer in Roswell, New Mexico, finds strange metallic debris scattered across his field. The US military swoops in overnight, cordons off the site, and claims it was a weather balloon. But whispers begin to spread. whispers of a crash, of non-human technology, of something that fell from the sky and changed history. For decades, people called it the birth of the UFO era. But what if it wasn't alien at all? What if the Roswell crash was the aftershock of something born years earlier in a mountain bunker under Nazi control? Here's a chilling timeline to consider. In 1945, as Germany collapsed, the US launched Operation Alsos, a secret mission to capture all Nazi scientific research before the Soviets did. They gathered documents on nuclear energy, propulsion systems, and unconventional power sources. By 1946, dozens of German scientists, including those connected to Kammler's projects, were working in Los Alamos, White Sands, and Fort Bliss, New Mexico, right where the first atomic bombs were tested, right where the first UFOs were seen. Coincidence or continuation? Several of those scientists, including ones tied to SS programs, were experts in electromagnetic propulsion, the same theories allegedly behind Glocke. And just as these men arrived, strange new aircraft began appearing in US skies, discs, orbs, silent craft that could hover, accelerate, and vanish. Not alien ships, perhaps human prototypes. Declassified FBI memos from the late 1940s even reference disc-shaped experimental aircraft under Air Force evaluation. No mention of extraterrestrials, just classified technology. So maybe the mystery isn't who built them, but where the knowledge came from. Let's look at the science for a second. The bell, according to myth, created intense torsion fields, twisting space around it through rapid counter-rotation. Modern physics calls that electrogravitics, a real area of research studied in both the US and USSR during the Cold War. Scientists like Thomas Townsend Brown explored the link between electricity and gravity. Theories eerily similar to what the bell supposedly used. So maybe the Nazis hadn't mastered it, but maybe they started it. And that's the haunting part. Roswell might not have been about little green men. It might have been about something far more human. A technology reborn from the ashes of the rage, now in American hands. Because when you follow the pattern, the secret research, the sudden disappearances, the new propulsion tests, one thing becomes clear: the bell didn't just vanish, it evolved. And it may still be flying above us today, hidden under names like Aurora, TR-3B, or advanced aerospace platforms. The Cold War wasn't fought on battlefields. It was fought in the dark, inside laboratories, and behind concrete walls where no one could see what was being built. It was a war for information, for energy, for control of reality itself. And deep inside that hidden race, the ghost of Glocke resurfaced. By the 1950s, both the United States and the Soviet Union had one shared obsession: master the unknown. Each side wanted a weapon so advanced it would make nuclear bombs look primitive. For the Soviets, this meant massive research into magnetohydrodynamics and torsion physics. Strange, theoretical work that some historians believe was inspired by captured Nazi files. For the Americans, it meant black projects, Area 51, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and the rise of the unidentified flying object. Every secret project had a code name: Project Sign, Project Grudge, Project Blue Book. The public was told they were chasing aliens, but the insiders knew they were chasing something far more real: our own hidden experiments. And here's where the bell fits perfectly. US Air Force memos from the 1950s refer to research into electrostatic propulsion systems and rotating plasma effects. In one declassified note, a scientist compared their test results to a previously noted German design concept. No name, no diagram, but the resemblance to Die Glocke was unmistakable. Meanwhile, on the other side of the Iron Curtain, Soviet scientists like Nikolai Kozyrev were running experiments on time, energy, and the torsion fields of rotating masses. Again, echoing the same principles attributed to the bell. It's as if two ghosts, one German, one ideological, were racing each other through history. Let's be blunt. There's no proof that either side ever built an operational anti-gravity craft. But what is proven, beyond question, is that billions of dollars vanished into classified physics programs between 1947 and 1980. That's not myth. That's budget history. And then there's the human element, the scientists who talked too much and disappeared. In the 1960s, physicist Thomas Townsend Brown, who openly discussed electrogravitics, suddenly lost government funding and faded from the public eye. In the USSR, Kozyrev was imprisoned for unpatriotic science, patterns of silence, patterns of fear. It's almost poetic. Every time someone got close to explaining how the bell might have worked, the system, whichever one, made sure the conversation ended. Because control over knowledge is control over the future. So what if the real story of Die Glocke isn't about one machine at all? What if it's about the birth of a global secret? The unspoken agreement between powers that some discoveries are too dangerous for the public to ever see. By the 1970s, the world had moved on, or at least it thought it had. Man had walked on the moon, nuclear treaties were signed, and the Cold War settled into its icy rhythm of mutual fear. But beneath that calm surface, strange things began happening again. Night after night, reports came in from military bases, radar operators, and commercial pilots. Unidentified objects, silent, fast, capable of instant acceleration, defying every known law of physics. They weren't glowing green saucers. They were metallic, structured, mechanical. And wherever they appeared, the military always arrived first. The official explanation: swamp gas, weather balloons, atmospheric reflections. Always something neat, dismissive, insulting to the witnesses' intelligence. But behind closed doors, high-ranking officials weren't laughing. In 1980, declassified CIA documents revealed internal panic, not about aliens, but about advanced propulsion vehicles that may originate from covert programs. The files use terms like field, effect propulsion, and gravitic control systems. Sound familiar? It should. That's almost word for word the physics described in the Nazi Bell Legend 30, 5 years earlier. Then came the Whistleblowers, men like Bob Lazar, claiming he worked on reverse engineering disk-shaped craft at a facility called S4 near Area 51. He spoke of a reactor using a mysterious element, creating a gravitational field strong enough to bend light itself. Most dismissed him as a crank. Yet decades later, science confirmed the existence of element 115, exactly as he described. Coincidence, maybe, or maybe not. Other insiders hinted at projects like Project Winterhaven and Project Silver Bug, both real declassified Air Force initiatives exploring disk-shaped aircraft and electrogravitics in the 1950s. In short, the Bell never vanished. It simply changed its name. And still, the silence continues. Freedom of information requests return, no relevant records. Key pages are redacted. Files disappear from archives. Even Wernher von Braun, before his death, hinted cryptically that the next great threat would come from space, and it would be man-made. Let that sink in. The pattern is as old as power itself. Every time humanity discovers something capable of redefining our place in the universe, it gets locked away. First by Nazis, then by Cold War generals, then by corporate defense contractors. Hidden behind 1,000 layers of classification. Because truth, when it threatens control, becomes the most dangerous weapon of all. And that brings us to now. The modern world of leaks, Pentagon UFO hearings, and military pilots describing tic-tac craft performing maneuvers identical to those reported in 1940s Germany. History repeating in a higher orbit. Let's strip away the fog, the myths, the whispered conspiracies. Let's forget for a moment whether Die Glocke ever spun in a mountain bunker, or if it was nothing more than a fevered dream of a dying empire. Because in the end, it's not the machine that matters. It's what it reveals about us. Every civilization, at the height of its power, reaches for something forbidden. The Romans built monuments to gods they no longer believed in. The British Empire tried to own time itself through colonization. And Nazi Germany, in its final delusion, tried to rewrite the laws of nature. The Bell is not just a story about a secret device. It's a mirror reflecting the darkest side of human ambition. It's what happens when genius divorces morality, when progress serves ideology instead of truth. Think about it. The Nazis didn't invent the hunger for power, they only amplified it. They turned science into faith, and faith into a weapon. They worship progress, not humanity. And that's why the legend of Die Glocke endures, because it forces us to confront a question we still haven't answered. How far would we go to control reality itself? Every generation since has carried that same temptation. The Cold War turned it into a global obsession. Today, it hides behind terms like quantum supremacy, AI singularity, and energy dominance. Different words, same desire. To be gods in a universe that never asked for one. Maybe the bell never flew. Maybe it never glowed. Maybe it was just a crude, failed experiment buried under tons of rubble. But symbolically, it has already flown through decades of secrecy, power, and paranoia. And its echoes reach us even now. Every classified file, every unexplained light in the sky, every technological leap hidden behind a military patent. They all carry the same DNA. The dream that started in Nazi Germany didn't die there. It evolved, it globalized, it became the new normal. Science without conscience, power without oversight, progress without empathy. So what's the real lesson of the bell? It's not about time travel. It's not about anti-gravity. It's about accountability. Because once knowledge becomes untethered from morality, it stops being discovery and starts being domination. The story of Glocke warns us. Every time humanity chases ultimate power, it finds ultimate ruin. Every empire that tried to bend the universe to its will ended the same way. In ashes, in silence, in mystery. Maybe that's why no one ever found the bell. Because it was never meant to be found. It was meant to be remembered as the sound of warning echoing through history. A bell that tolls not for the dead, but for the living, who still haven't learned.